Welcome back to Student Hub Live. Oh, it's been a fabulous afternoon. I want to start again with some more of our lovely study spaces you've been sending in to us. Thank you so much for doing this. We've got some amazing student. Well, what's amazing is that I've had it made and delivered to the house, which was pretty much like a Mission Impossible operation to get to the post room, into the office, etc. But we've got these lovely Student Hub Live stationery. So we're giving these away as prizes for our awards for the best study space. We've also got some lovely highlighters and pens and also post-it notes, because post-it notes in our opinion are very, very essential. So let's take a look and see Anna's space. Anna's in Nottingham. Anna says, my study space, small space, big knowledge, with my little friends here. That looks absolutely fantastic, and I like the way that desk folds in and out. That's really, really good and very nicely organized. Christine from Southport says this is her study space and she's looking forward to filling her head with lots of information, smiley face. And I think you certainly will in that lovely environment. Aren't you lucky with that nice chair? That looks very cozy. Ruth in Weymouth has a lovely organised study space with some beautiful flowers here. And she says that her candle holder says, keep your head, heels and standards high. And her positive calendar certainly gets her through. She says it's the little things. And also Ruth has printed out her module calendar and has a daily template that she fills in each day on her cork board, which is super organised, and has flowers as a study buddy because they make you feel good. Much better than my badly behaved dogs, who I'm going to have to get rid of in just a second. I have to text my daughter. Right, so next, we're going to show some more of those towards the end of the session. But let's talk to Azumah about social media, because this is one area that develops from our previous discussion. So we were talking earlier about using social media just as students, but now we're going to talk about it in terms of your academic profile. Azumah, I wonder if I might let you start, and I'm going to go and bribe the dogs with a toy.
Okay, hi. So, hello, everybody.
Sophie?
My name is Azumah. I work at the university, at the Open University as an academic, and we're going to talk about the uses of social media to build your academic profile. I think most people assume that if you're on social media, it's automatically a trivial space, a space where you can just post pictures of your lunch or of your pets or just things like that, which of course it is those spaces, but it's also a really good space for you to meet and talk to other students and to talk to academics. By that I mean, if you're studying any course, you'll be reading the work that's been published in peer-reviewed journals. And what's good about social media is very often you get a chance to meet the academics behind that kind of work, that published work. So there are all sorts of really positive things to do with social media, which I know Karen is going to lead us through.
To deploy one of the dogs elsewhere. So I've separated them, Azumah, which I think is a very cunning plan indeed. Yes, no,
Indeed.
absolutely. So one of the things, though, that we were talking about earlier, Azumah, was some of the dangers of participation in certain types of social media, and how for some students, you know, it can be both a relief to meet other people, but then there can also be the sense of, well, people are ahead of me, they're behind me, I'm not sure what that opinion means, I'm not sure what it means if someone's left the group. So there can be all sorts of ways of negotiating things, and I think that can be quite challenging for people, the spoken and the unspoken, in particular when they're not sure what's there. The other important thing, I think, though, is to be mindful that, you know, very often in these academic spaces, we are creating an artifact of our future identities as academics. And so it's very important to be mindful of how we're communicating and conversing with others in those spaces.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that can happen with social media spaces is that they have this kind of beguiling intimacy around them. So you can almost forget that you are actually in public. You can get into a really nice, interesting conversation with an interesting, enjoyable, funny person. And the rest of the world just seems to be invisible to you. And I can remember this. hearing stories about perhaps a footballer getting chatting to somebody and enjoying the conversation so much that he ended up giving the person his telephone number on Twitter. I mean, with millions of people there, but just somehow forgetting that there was an audience. So there can be that kind of a danger of becoming perhaps a bit too relaxed and enjoying yourself too much and forgetting that this is public. And actually, as we know with social media, that once you put something out there, it's difficult for it to disappear. You can delete the post. But as lots of people will tell you on Twitter, if you say something that's controversial and people are listening, somebody else can very, very easily have captured and copied that post. So I'm not saying that to, oh, you've got to be careful, you've got to be careful about everything, but I do think you need to be a little bit mindful. Are you happy for your perhaps your younger brothers or sisters, your parents or your work friends or other people who you want to present in a certain way, who you want to see you in a certain way? Are you happy for those people to see this conversation? And just as long as you've got that in the back of your mind, and I think that you can't go far wrong, which doesn't mean don't relax and enjoy yourself and be yourself, but just be mindful. If you've got things to say which are risky or edgy or anything else, keep them for personal conversations. Don't necessarily post them on social media.
Mm-mm. But as you say, you can get lulled into this false sense of intimacy at times, and before you know it, it can be very easy, perhaps even after a glass of wine, to become embroiled in a political discussion or something that then becomes permanent and as some sort of artifact. Negotiating some of those terrains with people who may have more or less information. So some of the dangers, I guess, are getting involved with conversations that maybe, are not the best idea to be involved with, in terms of what they say about you, and perhaps what you're saying about particular subjects. I've been seeing so many arguments and disagreements about something of which there's often very little basis on social media. And that must have quite a damaging effect to people, doesn't it?
I think everybody will need to make their own judgments about what they feel works for them and what's appropriate for
Mm.
them. And if you know that you're somebody who feels quite passionate and quite involved and quite interested in politics, then by all means, you will want to talk about it. And, in being mindful of your academic profile, I'm not saying that you can only say things that everybody will agree with. I think when it becomes problematic, is that there are going to be people online who, well, the way I like to see it is if I were in a crowded room with lots of really interesting people, I'm not going to talk to somebody if the conversation isn't productive, isn't positive, isn't engaging, or any of those types of things. I'll make my choices about who it is I want to talk to and what it is I want to say to them. And I think that you can take that idea and apply it in much the same way to social media. You don't have to talk to somebody just because they've talked to you, or you don't have to respond to somebody just because they've asked you a question. And also, there are loads of different social media platforms, and I mainly have in mind Twitter because I think that's the one that I find myself most present on. And don't forget, there are things like block buttons and mute buttons, and actually, you can just turn the computer off and walk away. You don't have to respond to a comment if it's actually being made. And yes, for some reason, I think perhaps it's because it's on our personal mobile phone and it's in an intimate space with us in our living room, in our home, wherever we are. We can become perhaps more involved than we need to be. So yes, it does help to kind of create some distance, switch it off for 10 minutes and switch over to another conversation.
No, absolutely. Some really good ideas about limits. Because, of course, sometimes some of these things, our data is often monetized, and used in different ways. People can access different information, follow our trends of what sort of things we're looking at. So much of our private life isn't as private as we thought. And there's a lot of issue around privacy, in particular online. And I think this translates into social media also. But as you say, it can be a great space to have some of those political arguments. And we do see people in particular on Twitter, often having very interesting debates, and being able to use the format so that there's a very limited amount of content, not a massive essay, to develop the argument further. So those spaces can be useful. What would you advise to students who maybe wanted to connect with others, or maybe use some of those spaces to make contact, to develop academic arguments? What would keep them safe in a sort of area that has risks around it?
Um, I think I always like to see it as a matter of making good choices and being quite explicit about the kinds of choices that you're making. And as I say, if you're in a room full of people, you'll look around and you'll decide who does it look interesting, safe, fun to actually talk to. And you can apply those same principles to social media. So, in other words, any subject that you're interested in, any subject that you're reading about as part of your studies, any of the journals that you engage in, actually, if you're a student at the Open University, I would imagine that most of the departments that you're part of, that the curricular areas that you're in, will have a social media presence. And so I think it's a good idea to begin to seek out, to search for the names of people that you know are interested in, and actually do a search on the subjects, whether that's childcare, whether that's further education, whatever it is. You can do a search on those subjects and find out who are the people online who are also interested in those subjects. It's worth looking at biographies, reading a little bit to find out who that person is. But it's also worth actually looking through their timeline to see the kinds of conversations that they're having. And I think there's a lot to be said for uh, being mindful of how you sift through information, which again, if you're a student, is something that you will be thinking about and getting used to. So just because somebody on the internet says X, Y, or Z, I mean, I won't repeat, but some outrageous claim like coronavirus isn't infectious, you don't have to believe them. You have to know who are the credible people who can talk about these subjects, and make those kinds of choices about who you will and who you won't accept information from.
Mm. So just like we would choose who to talk to at a party, who we would respect, which theory we think holds more weight than others, we're using those academic skills to filter some of those things. And as you say, also using it to make connections. So social media can be brilliant to keep up to date with various policies, various people, some key thinkers, etc., in that sector. But what if people don't have followers on their Twitter, account? What if people find it hard to, I guess, engage in spaces where they want to be? Have you got any advice for how you might build your own personal networks?
Yes, I mean, I think, and there is a debate that people will have whether Twitter is a good space for shy people or a good space for extroverts, and I really don't know. I tend to think that it is quite a good space if you happen to be somebody who is quite shy, because it means that you've got time to think about what it is you want to say, to think about your responses. You don't have to respond to something straight away. If you see a tweet and you respond to it a day late or 2 weeks late because you wanted to think about something, that's absolutely fine. That's entirely legitimate. So I think if you are, for example, on Twitter and you want to sort of get stuck in and get talking to people, well, just do it. Just find the conversations that people are having, which is similar to the things that you're interested in, and respond to it. Um, and some people will respond back to you and some people won't. It's always good to follow people. And once you are talking yourself, once you are saying things yourself, people might not directly respond to you all the time. But in time, over a few months or whatever it is, they will begin to respond and they will begin to follow you if they find what you're talking about interesting. Sometimes there are, for example, television programs which might be interested and relevant for your area. It's a nice thing that a lot of people do when they have these sort of tweet alongs. So they'll watch a particular program, and while they're watching it, they will be talking about it to people online. And that's another way of just finding people who are interested in what you're interested in. And I think anyone who's a student at the OU will find that their associate lecturer, the academic associated with their course, the department itself will have a Twitter account. And I think that you could almost go and see whoever is following that Twitter account and start following the same people. And if they know that you're another student on the course, or you're somebody who's doing the course now and they've done it previously or something like that, it's a network. It begins just to spread out from that. And then some of those people will also follow you back.
I was talking to a student who, in fact, won the entrepreneurship competition that the OU did, and he made some amazing networks just by getting people on Twitter and saying, I know that you've been da 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 da. Can I have a chat to you about these? And he ended up making some amazing contact. And it's incredible. I don't think I've ever not responded to somebody who's messaged me about a particular thing when at least they know your area and they've got a sensible question. And people are so often willing to help other people, in particular when they're part of the OU family. So I think that's really, really sound advice. Thank you very much for that. So other things that may be useful, in particular, if you don't want to follow people. I know you're talking about Twitter more than other things, but one of the great things about Twitter is hashtags and trends. And that allows you, I guess, to see people who you may not know of, who may be very vocal in particular spaces. Do you want to end just by saying a little bit about using hashtags instead of people on Twitter?
Yes, of course. I mean, I think it's a matter of exploring, and it might start with identifying the people that you're interested in and seeing what hashtags they're using to actually talk and communicate with others. There's nothing to stop you from developing a hashtag, letting your associate lecturer, letting the academic associated with your module or your course to say to everybody who's on this course, let's all speak to each other when we're ready online using this hashtag. And the nice thing about doing something like that is that other people who are not necessarily at the OU but interested in your subject will follow you, will see your tweets and follow you. Or just think of, what is the key word? Is it childhood studies? Is it education studies? Is it Marxism? Is it politics? Whatever it is, what is your keyword? Put the hashtag in front of it, and every tweet you send, put that hashtag there, and that just gives people another way of actually finding you. So I mean, there are always going to be people at the end of this, but you don't have to search for the person. You can search for the subject.
Brilliant. That's been some wonderful advice, Azumah. Thank you so much. I'd like to take a quick trip to our hot desk. HJ, how's everyone at home?
Everyone, as always, is doing really well and sharing some really good thoughts and tips. I think the main thought that we have in the chat is that social media is great when it's used well and filtered, and we're managing it for our own gain. So a lot of people are saying it's great if you use it to your advantage and you filter all the information, and having a healthy balance. And Joanne from the Career Service pointed out that it's a great tool for making connections and networking and for career opportunities as well. So I think we're definitely on board with social media being a great tool when used well.
Brilliant. That's wonderful. Well, let's take a short break now. We're going to look at one of the trailers for our Adobe Connect session. So if you haven't joined us at Student Hub Live in Adobe Connect, this is the kind of thing that goes on in there. And I'm going to be talking to my lovely co-presenter of those Adobe Connect sessions, Isabella, who is also a tutor next. And we're going to talk about the tutor relationship. So stay tuned and we'll be back soon.